6 Super Bowls, 8 championship rings, 333 wins. And still not enough. That's the reality Bill Belichick woke up to when the phone rang, and the words coming from the other end confirmed something no one in football thought was possible. Bill Belichick was not going to Canton. Not yet. And the 5 words he muttered afterward would ripple across the entire NFL world that if you've ever believed greatness guarantees immortality in football, stay with me, because this story challenges everything we think we know about legacy, power, and how the Hall of Fame really works. For decades, Bill Belichick wasn't just a coach. He was the system, the standard, the cold, calculating architect behind the most dominant dynasty professional sports has ever seen. 6 Super Bowl titles as a head coach. 2 more as an assistant. 20 years of sustained excellence in New England. The hoodie. The mumble. The ruthless efficiency. Belichick didn't chase approval. He collected Lombardies. When the 73-year-old legend became eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the assumption around the league was universal. First ballot. No debate. No drama. Just a formality. Until it wasn't. Earlier this year, the Hall of Fame's 50-member selection committee met to vote on the class of 2026. The rules are clear. To be inducted on the first ballot, a candidate needs 40 of the 50 votes. 40 people, many of whom built their careers covering or competing against Belichick, needed to say yes. They didn't. According to sources with direct knowledge of the vote, Bill Belichick came up short. How short? That number remains sealed behind the Hall's curtain of secrecy. But what we do know is this. A Hall representative personally called Belichick last Friday afternoon and delivered the news. He would not be heading to Canton this summer. And in that moment, the most decorated coach in NFL history asked a question that cut through every press release and talking point. 6 Super Bowls isn't enough? What does a guy have to do? 5 words. No yelling. No press conference. No dramatic statement. Just disbelief. Belichick didn't rage. He didn't leak. He didn't posture. He did what he's always done. Internalized it. And moved on. But the football world didn't. Because this wasn't just about Bill Belichick missing a gold jacket ceremony. This was about the meaning of greatness. About how legacies are judged. And about whether the Hall of Fame just crossed a line no one thought it would. Let's put the resume in perspective. Bill Belichick finished his coaching career with 333 total wins, including the playoffs. That's second all-time in NFL history, trailing only Don Shula. He built a dynasty that spanned 2 decades, survived multiple roster overhauls, rule changes, cap constraints, and cultural shifts within the league. He won Super Bowls with different quarterbacks, different defenses, different eras of football. He wasn't just winning games. He was redefining how football was coached. Entire coaching trees sprouted from his system. Defensive schemes still taught today trace back to Belichick's film rooms. Opposing teams didn't just prepare for the Patriots. They braced for psychological warfare, which is why the reaction around the league was immediate shock. Former players, executives, analysts, coaches. The same sentiment echoed everywhere. How? How does a man with 6 Super Bowl rings as a head coach not get in on the first ballot? The Hall of Fame, predictably, offered no explanation. According to league policy, the voting process is confidential. No breakdowns. No rationales. No transparency. Just a reminder that the official announcement of the new class will come on February 5th during NFL Honors in San Francisco as part of Super Bowl week. Silence. And that silence only fueled speculation. Because this vote didn't happen in a vacuum. The selection committee is made up mostly of veteran NFL reporters, along with a small number of former executives and coaches. Among them are Hall of Famers like Bill Polian and Tony Dungy. People who understand football history. People who understand impact. But they're also people. With memories. With opinions. With relationships. And that's where this story gets complicated. Because Belichick wasn't the only major New England figure on the ballot. For the first time ever, Patriots owner Robert Kraft reached finalist status. At 84 years old, Kraft had spent years lobbying quietly, building support, and waiting for his moment. And suddenly, his moment arrived, at the exact same time as Bill Belichick's .2 pillars of the Patriots dynasty. 1 slot, 1 vote tally, and a fractured relationship. Belichick and Kraft have been on poor terms since their split in January 2024. Years of tension, power struggles, and unspoken resentment finally came into the open when Belichick's tenure in New England ended. The dynasty that once looked inseparable suddenly had a visible fault line. Inside league circles, that context matters, because Hall of Fame voting isn't just about numbers. It's about narratives. Some voters reportedly wrestled with a question they never had to ask before. Who deserves more credit for the Patriots dynasty? The coach? Or the owner? And while no one will publicly admit it, splitting votes between two intertwined legacies may have cost Belichick just enough support to delay his induction. That doesn't mean voters believed he wasn't worthy. It means the room wasn't unified, and that distinction changes everything, because being left out on the first ballot carries weight. It creates doubt where there never was any. It opens doors to revisionist history. Suddenly, people start relitigating late career struggles. The post-Brady years. The losing seasons. The personnel decisions that didn't work. Things that were once footnotes become talking points. Belichick's defenders argue that's absurd. Every great career ends somewhere. Don Shula had lean years. Bill Walsh stepped away early. Chuck Noll missed the playoffs in his final seasons. None of that erased what came before. So why does it matter now? That's the question hanging over Canton. Was this a message? A power play? Or simply the byproduct of an imperfect system trying to rank the unrankable? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The Hall of Fame has always been subjective. It's not a spreadsheet. It's a room full of people voting with their heads and their hearts. And sometimes, emotions when Belichick's demeanor didn't help. He was never media-friendly. Never warm. Never generous with access. For decades, he treated reporters like obstacles rather than partners. And now, many of those same reporters hold ballots. That reality makes people uncomfortable, but it's real. The irony is brutal. The same man who preached, "Do your job," and ignored outside noise is now at the mercy of outside opinion. Still, even critics admit this isn't the end of the story. Belichick will get in. Almost certainly. Whether it's next year or the one after, Canton will eventually open its doors. His bust will be sculpted. His legacy will be enshrined. But the delay matters. Because first ballot induction is about unanimity. It's about recognition without hesitation. And for the first time in his career, Bill Belichick wasn't a unanimous choice. That stings, and maybe that's why his 5-word response resonates so deeply. Not because it's angry, but because it's human. What does a guy have to do? It's the question every competitor asks at some point. When the scoreboard says you won, but the decision says otherwise. And now the NFL world waits. Waits for February 5th. Waits for explanations that may never come. Waits to see how history ultimately judges the man who shaped a generation of football. So here's the real question. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Was this a justified delay, or did the Hall of Fame just overthink the most obvious decision in NFL history? And the more you sit with it, the more uncomfortable the situation becomes for the Hall of Fame itself. Because this wasn't a borderline case. This wasn't a debate between two good candidates. This was Bill Belichick, the man whose resume used to end arguments before they even started. Around league offices, one executive put it bluntly. If Belichick isn't a first-ballot Hall of Famer, then the term first ballot has lost its meaning entirely. Think about what first-ballot induction is supposed to represent. Not perfection, not popularity, but inevitability. The idea that some careers transcend debate. That when eligibility opens, the door to Canton should already be unlocked. For years, Bill Belichick was the measuring stick. Coaches were judged against him. Dynasties were compared to his. Failures were explained by the absence of what he had. And yet, in that room, enough voters hesitated. Some of that hesitation, insiders suggest, had nothing to do with Super Bowls or win totals. It was about control, about influence, about how much power one man wielded for so long. Belichick didn't just coach teams. He bent organizations around his will. Front offices deferred to him. Owners trusted him. Players feared disappointing him more than losing their jobs. That kind of authority is rare, and for some, unsettling. The Hall of Fame has always struggled with figures who dominated too completely, because dominance forces uncomfortable questions. Who really mattered more? The quarterback? The coach? The owner? The system? In New England, those lines were blurred on purpose. And now, voters are trying to untangle them after the fact. The post-Brady years didn't help. Once Tom Brady left for Tampa Bay and immediately won another Super Bowl, the narrative shifted. Suddenly, people weren't just praising Belichick's brilliance. They were reevaluating it. Was Brady the engine? Was Belichick the architect? Or was it something inseparable that only worked together? Those questions lingered longer than Belichick's supporters expected. And when the Patriots struggled to find a new franchise quarterback, critics pounced. Draft misses. Offensive stagnation. Losing seasons. For the first time in decades, Belichick looked mortal. But here's the part that often gets ignored. Dynasties don't end cleanly. They erode. They age. They fracture. And the bill eventually comes due. No coach in NFL history has escaped that reality. Yet for Belichick, the standard was never normal. It was impossible. And the moment he slipped below impossible, the whispers grew louder. That context followed him into the Hall of Fame voting room. Not spoken aloud, but felt. And then there's Robert Kraft, the owner who gave Belichick his first real chance. The owner who signed the checks. The owner who lifted 6 Lombardi trophies alongside him. Their relationship was once portrayed as unbreakable. 2 men aligned by a singular goal. Win at all costs, but success amplifies ego. And over time, cracks formed up by the end. Belichick and Kraft weren't partners. They were rivals for credit. And that rivalry didn't end quietly. It ended publicly, awkwardly, and unresolved. Now imagine being a voter in that room. 2 Patriots icons. 1 spot. 1 vote threshold. Who do you elevate first? Some voters likely felt Kraft had waited long enough. That owners rarely get recognized. That without Kraft's stability and patience, none of it happens. Others felt Belichick was the dynasty. That no owner wins 6 Super Bowls without a genius on the sideline. And when voters split down philosophical lines, no one reaches 40. That's how history stalls. What makes this even more ironic is Belichick's own philosophy. He never cared about individual honors. Never chased Coach of the Year awards. Never lobbied. Never played the politics. And now, politics may be the only thing standing between him and Canton. Still, those close to Belichick say he isn't bitter. Disappointed, yes. Confused, certainly. But not consumed by in his mind. The work is already done. And that might be the most Belichick thing of all. Because while fans argue and analysts debate, Belichick is already thinking about football again. About schemes. About matchups. About how the league keeps evolving. Legacy was never his motivator. Control was. Preparation was. Winning was. But make no mistake. This snub will follow him. Every time a coach is inducted on the first ballot, Belichick's absence will be the unspoken comparison. Every Hall of Fame ceremony will quietly remind voters of the delay. And eventually, when his name is finally called, the applause will be louder. The speech is longer. The reflection deeper. But the question will remain. Why the wait? Because the Hall of Fame doesn't just preserve history. It shapes it. And by hesitating with Belichick, it invited doubt where there was once certainty. Maybe next year the vote won't be close. Maybe voters will correct course. Maybe this becomes a footnote instead of a fractured dot, or maybe this moment becomes symbolic. A reminder that even the greatest figures are subject to human judgment. Either way, Bill Belichick didn't change. The rings didn't vanish. The wins didn't disappear. The dynasty didn't dissolve. Only the illusion of automatic recognition did. And that's why this story matters far beyond one gold jacket, that it's about how greatness is remembered. Who gets to decide? And whether accomplishments alone are still enough. So I'll ask you again, because this conversation isn't over. Did the Hall of Fame protect its process, or did it fail its purpose? Let me know what you think.